Thanks, everybody, and it's great to see everybody back in Ireland for the annual conference week. It's always a great time to reconnect with colleagues around the world, so lovely to see all our new faces and familiar faces back in Ireland. So I'm going to open up by just talking a little bit about J&J. So Johnson & Johnson is a global leader in the life sciences sector, and over the last 8 decades has become an enduring strategic partner of Ireland and IDA Ireland. The company employs circa 5,000 staff across 3 manufacturing sites in Cork and Limerick, an R&D centre in Galway with Cerenovus, and has other services and technical operations around the country. We're absolutely delighted that Gary Hartner has joined us for a discussion today on the ongoing evolution and transformation in the life sciences landscape. So welcome Gary to the stage. Thanks, folks. Hello again. So Gary, just to kick off, I might ask you just to introduce yourself to some of the team that might know you.
Sure.
And talk a little bit about your role at J&J.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rachel, and great to be here. So Gary Harnett, I've worked for J&J now for, coming on to 12 years. And prior to that, I've worked in healthcare and supply chain roles pretty much for all my career in many different companies in Ireland, in GE Healthcare, MSD, Bosch and Lomb, and back into J&J. My current role is I'm responsible for global partnership and external supplies. So across our supply chain within pharmaceutical business, we have about 180 external partners, and my responsibility is to manage all of them across Asia, North America, and Europe. Prior to that, I used to be the site lead for the Janssen bio site in Cork, and prior to that, I used to be the site lead for the Diffuse Entities site in Ringaskiddy in Cork as well. So yeah, delighted to be here.
Great, thanks for that. You know, it's that breadth and depth of, experience across the medtech and the biopharma side, and indeed your global role. I think it's fair to say you've probably seen what we would all agree has been a challenging few years for the life sciences industry as it calibrates, after COVID. So from your perspective, what have been the biggest impacts that you've seen within J&J over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think, J&J, we were only talking a little bit earlier, but J&J is, like any kind of big multinational company, has a very kind of complex supply chain. And we were just talking about some statistics where, we have 400,000 individual products or SKUs of 100,000 orders a day, over 400 different customers globally, distribute products all around the world, and touch and affect about just over 1 million patients or consumers every day. So with that, then you have about 100 internal manufacturing sites, and then you have hundreds of external partners, over 1,000 sub-suppliers or tier 2 suppliers, distribution centers, global networks. So you can imagine in your own mind the computations about trying to manage the complexity of those supply chains in terms of moving products all around the globe. So if you think about trying to manage that pre-COVID and the disruptions over the last few years to managing it now, I would say that we understand our supply chain a lot better now than we did probably 4 or 5 years ago. And you might ask why that is. So we really understand not just who our suppliers are, but who our tier 2 and who our tier 3 suppliers are. So if you want to order a supplier like a component for your product, the person who's supplying that from you, whether it's in the US or Asia or Europe, they have 2 or 3 suppliers or multiple sub-suppliers that make up the components. So really understanding how your supply chain is fully resilient, and if you have single points of failure anywhere across your supply chain or even your distribution network. And I think most organizations really understand their supply chains a lot better because they've had to. So it's not just good enough to do kind of inventory stockpiles to protect against the risk of disruption. You really need to understand your supply chains. So stuff that we're doing now to kind of help is previously we'd have always looked at reliable supply of our products at the right cost to our customers. Nowadays, we're measuring and looking at things such as, okay, how do we do that in an agile way? How can we be more responsive and react to disruption? How can we build a more resilient network so that we have maybe suppliers or nodes, manufacturing nodes in different locations across the globe, so we're not so dependent on different geographies or different spaces? And how can we do that in a more sustainable way as well? We're starting to think a little bit about that in our decision making. So that really informs how we make decisions now in terms of new products coming through or managing existing life cycle products. So a lot more clarity and understanding, but also focusing on different or additional things as well, Rachel.
Yeah, we had John Ferguson with us this morning from The Economist, and he talked about the shift, from just in time to just in case, and building that buffer, but equally trying to balance that with, the commercial need to manage cash and not tie too much cash up in inventory. And I think it struck me as very challenging, particularly in an organisation like Johnson & Johnson, which is all of the complexity you've just spoken about. We noted recently that the supply group is the first tenant within the Fujifilm diasynthesis cell culture manufacturing site in North Carolina. How do you see the global partnership model evolving now within the organisation and more broadly, as companies look to diversify, their supply chain and I suppose de-risk and build additional resilience into the supply chain for the longer term? And what do you see in that context then around risks or opportunities for Ireland?
Yeah, I think when you look at how you design a pretty sophisticated supply chain to take into account all of the things that we spoke about, we look at many factors to build that agility and resilience, and whether that's geographical location, we mentioned the stuff around political stability, regulatory framework. We look at things such as the life cycle of the product. We look at the talent in the node. We look at tax. We look at IP framework. You look at a level of complexity, the amount of variability. Is it a new product? Where is it in its life cycle? As I said, you're looking at redundancy in terms of the product as well. Do you have it in business continuity, a number of different nodes? So when you put all of that together, you want to make sure all the time you're reducing the risk to the patient, to the customer. And you want to do that, and there's always trade-offs in that. There's trade-offs because, if I'm going to launch a new product, and if I want to have two or three sub-suppliers for each raw material or each component in it, that takes money and cost. And it takes time as well. So if you have to build all of them in and get into your initial regulatory filing, which you have to do obviously in the healthcare space, it costs lots and it can take more time, so your speed to market is affected. Or do you do it at a later stage in your life cycle management? So you've got trade-offs in every decision that you make between agility, resilience, and cost. So if you think about what we did with partnerships then, so most in the pharmaceutical sector, particularly in the biologic space, most companies have about 80% of what they do internally. And generally, if you think about internally within your own business, why do you do that? You generally think you have more control in it. You have a higher level over the autonomy. You maybe want to protect IP-sensitive things that you're doing. Your quality, you kind of own yourself. So most companies keep somewhere between 80-85% internally, and then do about 10, 15, 20% externally. And through the years in different organizations, whether it's pharma and medtech, you have different ways. When you think about partnership, you might say, okay, so how are you going to partner? And most of the stuff for partnership is I cut you a purchase order to make me X batches of my product to a certain quality specification. Give them the purchase order, and they'll come back and say, yeah, I'll make those for you, and then here's your invoice. There you go. But these days, based on what we've learned over the last number of years, it's probably not good enough, right? Because, do I really know I want to have 100 batches in 2024 of product A? When I have so much variability happening in the world around us, so much fungibility, as we call it, in demand, you might want, I think I'm going to have somewhere between maybe 80 and 120 or 130 batches. So I can go to a partner and say, I think I'm going to target for 100, but I want that agility and flexibility. What's the cost of that? And they'll say, well, I'm not going to have that idle capacity. What are we going to do about it? So ways you could do that is you could enter a partnership in a bit more of a strategic way. So we talk about going up that maturity level of the partnership, and the model that we would enter with, the model that we entered with Fuji in North Carolina is they're building a brand new manufacturing facility, and we made choices between, we have so much increased demand, we don't have time enough to build a new node. It takes 5 to 7 years before you have 5 years before you have it built, and then another 4 or 5 years before you have all the countries approved, so you can get that up to scale. So we need to get capacity quicker, and they're ahead. So we sign into a long-term contract. So we're signing into a contract over 10 years. We have fully dedicated facility. We can put product A, B, C, D into it. So I can move between different products at no cost. The only requisite I have is to be able to fill it, okay, with the products that we need. And we can have more oversight, we can have more autonomy, we can have more control of the quality in it, we can have more protection of the IP because we don't have other partners in there. So for us, it's a way of de-risking our supply chain, not to the level where you have it internally, but to a level that we have more control. So if you think about opportunities in terms of from an Irish perspective, I think the key thing is I think organizations will want to partner more and more in the future because cash flow is king these days, and particularly within the volatile nature of the business markets that we have, and I think that's going to maintain for X number of years ahead. So companies are going to be managing their cash flow, and a way to do that is they'll be managing how to spend their capital. So trying to get CDMO organizations, more of them, into Ireland, right? There's some good examples. You have Wuxi Biologics in Dundalk, great facilities, full at the moment if you talk to them, right? And they've just finished building it. Organizations want to de-risk their supply chain, but they want to enter relationships that are longer term, that are lower risk, and all of the positive stuff that we spoke about previously. Ireland gives a place for businesses to invest in a safe, stable environment, good regulatory framework, great talent, delivers reliably, etc. So it's about attracting those type of partners in. But I can tell you that if there was more of them available in Ireland, we would choose more of them in a country like Ireland or location like Ireland. There's just not as many with capacity available.
We're to leave now, make a few calls. No, that's great. That's a great steer for us. I think it gives us a good sense of, diversifying our own portfolio and continuing to add to the ecosystem that's here. Because to your point, it's the richness of that really attracts investment, but also helps it to stay, retain, build, and grow. And then the spillover, as we've seen from our own end of year results, is really, really important. Just looking at, and I know JJ takes a very long-term perspective, and it's part of your credo over 40 years, the whole focus on sustainable investment and long-term investment. Two of your sites, the Depew site in Cork and the Janssen site, are both World Economic Forum exemplars from a sustainability and a digitalisation perspective. Can you just share with the room, what does being an exemplar from a global perspective look like at an operational level? Just, what is being best in class from the day-to-day point of view for the sites? And then, as an exemplar, how do you hold on to that status? And then where do you go next? Like, what's the next thing for you guys in terms of that dual transition?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to say is that, J&J's partnership with the World Economic Forum, you're like joining a club. And part of that is you get access to a lot of kind of intelligence as part of that organization about what best in class looks like. So it's agnostic to sectors in terms of what it is. You get I get a lot of access to what happens in whether it's the automotive industry, whether it's the agri-industry, etc. So I can get access into how they're thinking, technology, etc. So it really merges those well, which I think is interesting from an Irish perspective because we have such a strong sector area to play. So when we looked at that, we went on our journey many years ago in terms of this advanced manufacturing digitalization journey. And actually the early years were really just testing and learning with technologies. Whether that's automated, autonomous vehicles to assist with moving materials around, whether that was using data analytics to help figure something out quicker. But over the years, we started to really, what the Exemplar looks like is you have a really, really clear business strategy and priorities. You really want to know where you want to go in the next number of years. So you have your business goals, and the key is to use advanced manufacturing, digitalization, to help you achieve those value drivers. So as your value driver, you want to have better customer engagement scores. Do you want to have better cost competitiveness? Do you want to be more agile? What are you really looking to achieve? And we have a clear roadmap as an Exemplar site within the supply chain node, or supply chain itself as a node within the supply chain, to demonstrate a roadmap to how we use technologies to get there. So whether that's about anticipating issues in terms of your supply chain, whether that's about how you put sensors and technology into your manufacturing process to give you more real-time information to prevent issues or give you more efficiency in how you do stuff. So what you do is you have loads of use cases, but the use cases are really clear towards a multi-year plan that's going to drive business value for the overall business from the node within the subsidiary in Ireland. And we did that within the Depew site in the medtech space, and I actually was the site lead for both, all right, in terms of introducing it for the Janssen Sciences business as well. So that's what we did, and you get real value from it because it's quite a high bar to get the status. So you get audited, but you get access to a lot of information, which increases the kind of intelligence of the organization, of the node. I guess the other piece for me, the next stage that we're pushing for is now that we've got that kind of base level of intelligence, it's a case of, okay, how can we be that COE? Or how can we take that and be the thought leaders for the organization in advanced manufacturing, digitalization? So setting up an organization, so we're setting up leadership in that space, we're setting up a little hubs, control towers about how we do that. So if you build all of that out, that gets you ahead of the game because everybody else is still trying to get themselves to that level of the bar, and we push on. So the second thing we're doing is pushing more people out globally that have demonstrated that within the node that can help the broader organization be more successful in its overall journey as well.
No, that's fantastic to see Ireland as that real true lighthouse, because I do think, you know, you're unique insofar as you're at the position that you hold as a lighthouse across those two areas, and then obviously within the one organisation. So, you know, what we love to understand is, you know, what do we need to do more of as a country, as an agency, to really ensure that we can, you know, secure more lighthouse status for companies across digitalisation and sustainability. And not every company is as big and as resourced as you guys are, but equally, you know, every company has the potential to be a shining light within their organisation.
Agreed, and I think a lot of it is it's about connecting the dots. So, you know, I think Ireland is well positioned to build on the ecosystem that's there at the moment. So if you think about some of the stuff that's the journey that we've gone, if we look at even the advanced manufacturing, the stuff that we're doing in you and I work closely on in Digital Manufacturing Ireland, and as part of that, is that's most organizations, whether they're small SMEs or whether they're multinationals, even a lot of multinationals understand what digital is, understand what analytics are, understand what advanced manufacturing and automation is, but they struggle to understand how it's really going to provide value for them and their business. So organizations like the IDA or like DMI can help those companies to show them the way a little bit. So what I find is talking to most of leaders and most of those organizations, not all of them, some of them are ahead and at different points in their journey, is working with them to understand what you want to achieve to be competitive. Okay, how can you be successful? What's most valuable for you? And let's go in and do a diagnostic on that to understand how we can help you with different use cases to do that. And some organizations, that's why the vision from the IDA and Michael in his day, going back to years, was to, you know, it started out with saying, okay, how can we help organizations with their technology readiness level, where you have a midpoint in their technology readiness where they couldn't actually do things at scale. So they wanted to test some of these new manufacturing or this new digitalization, but they didn't have the money or didn't have the space or didn't have the time to do it at scale. So you build a center like DMI, and there are other centers across Ireland, as we know, that allows people to test in a safe place, or test in a place where there's a competency of knowledge to help them in that kind of co-pilot mode understand where their opportunities are. So From an IDA perspective, it's about making sure those companies know about the ecosystem, can tap into the different parts of the intelligence we have in Ireland, because we have a real intelligence, right, across the different sectors with the technology and the other industries we have, and help them get up that ladder of maturity. Because the more people we get up those steps of maturity, the more the SMEs, the more the sub-suppliers in the country, all of them will lift with it. And it'll make Ireland more and more attractive for further investment. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be around the digital advanced manufacturing. It's going to be around the sustainability. And they're all immersed. They're all really together, okay? In moving both the green and the digital together. So I think that's the big thing that the IDA, I think, can help with, is making people, connecting people together, connecting the dots and making them really aware of the rich ecosystem we have.
Yeah, we're seeing some great outcomes and feedback from companies that are engaging with digital manufacturing Ireland at the moment in terms of that practical, step forward to start on that digitalisation journey. Just shifting gears for a minute, last year the Janssen business announced a €150 million investment in Cork, particularly focused on immunology and oncology. What does the future hold for innovation and treatment in this space? And what role does technology have in your view going forward? We're talking a lot about AI, but equally from a manufacturing point of view, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I think that we've put some of our, J&J as an organization in our pharma business, we went from 20-something different therapeutic areas we were focused on, or modalities we focused on, maybe back in the 90s. And we streamed that down to 5 big therapeutic areas that we chased because we wanted to put much more deeper focus on certain areas. And their big bets are really immunology and oncology. And they're probably, at the moment, they're over 50% of our revenue. And are going to grow significantly over the next number of years. And if you look at our new molecular entities in the pipeline coming through, they're really strong in that area. So, I still think if I get specific on the biologic space, I still think there's a big role to play in small molecule business. So everyone gets overcome with the sexiness of the cell and gene therapy space. Yes, it's going to have a part to play. But I can tell you in J&J that by 2030, it'll only be about 10 to 15% of our sales. Most of our sales will come from small molecule business, which is your chemical manufacturing. And then the other part of it will come from your traditional monoclonal antibody sterile fill finish business. So that's where the sales are still going to be in terms of the main growth, because that's where the products that can make the biggest impact are. I think what you find is that you're having a lot more combination of products that are happening these days. So you're combining small molecule and large molecule together, so you can have a double whammy on if you're chasing cancer or you're chasing a treatment, so you can double hit it. Okay, so you can be under the technologies these days are much more targeted. Okay, in terms of the actual tumors or receptors that they're chasing. So that's one part of it. The cell and gene therapy is coming. It is more challenging from a cost perspective from a business. So while it can have a remarkable impact on patients' lives, we have a product out there, it's called CAR-T, it treats multiple myeloma. And we have treatments at the first line, second line, and third line of treatment if you're going through multiple myeloma or blood cancer treatment. And we have products for each one of those which help, but they help you prolong your life. This particular one, you go into it and it's a wonder product. You're in stage 4, which means that if this doesn't work, it's end of life for you. 70 to 80% of the patients who go on this are cured straight away. So basically, it's a cell therapy treatment, and it's cell antigen receptor treatment, and it goes in and takes out you go in, you take your blood out of your system, and you take it away to a treatment center, it's treated, and then it's pumped back into you, and then it's cured. Okay, so remarkable products, massively expensive to make, complex supply chains to do it, but there's going to be more and more of those in the years ahead. So Ireland can continue to work on making sure we have great talent, right? The primary skill set that you need for biologics and small molecule business can be enhanced a little bit for the cell and gene therapy, but they're the core competencies you want are still there. We just need to start attracting more and more of that manufacturing. There's some good good things happening in Ireland, but I think it's going to become an area of much more. But don't forget about the core pharmaceutical, small and large molecule space.
Very good. We're almost out of time, and I just open up to the Slido here. There's a couple of questions that have come in. So just, I suppose, to bring it all together, I think one that's interesting is just as we talked about geopolitical risk at the very start of the day. You know, have you ever faced a geopolitical risk where it was difficult to decide whether to act on it, like set up a new node, for example, or just monitor it, and what stakeholders are involved in that decision?
Oh gosh, for sure. We have lots of discussions around it about evaluating where, and you could have 100, 200 conversations around it with all different levels of an organization as complex as J&J in terms of everybody's, and we're a very consensus-driven organization, so it takes a lot to move something forward. I think we generally, we take a very long-term view when we do investments. So even though people may get excited about China and investing in China, you know, 50% of all of our raw materials and components come from China. Okay, we take the long-term view that China and US will fall in and out of love with each other many times over the years and years ahead. We're a global company, so we need to do global business. So we will continue to do business with all of those countries. Do we evaluate that in our big risk matrix about in those trade-off decisions about monitoring a node for a period of time? Yes. So for example, if there was trouble happening in a particular location or there was alarm bells, we may delay a decision on that and monitor how it goes, or we may use that as a bias for a lower risk decision in another node. And we have done that with some of those volatile kind of locations. But in all those locations, we have commercial companies, we have people working in Ukraine, we have people working in Russia, we have people working in Israel and Palestine, we have people in there selling product, okay, or supplying us with materials. So we have to work with all of them and take that view. But yeah, for sure, we take a common sense approach as well, and we won't invest in something if we think it's has a likelihood of volatility over a long period of time. And
just to close on that then, you know, where do you see Ireland's role in terms of helping to, you know, solidify those partnerships and play that, you know, that's in that safe space, you know, as a neutral location, a safe, trusted partner for all of those elements to come together?
I think it's about continuing to, like, we've got a great brand to sell, and I think we need to continue to sell that. And I think the minister said it quite well, is that we're positioned for opportunity rather than threat. So with a lot of the volatility that happens in the world, we're one of the most, you know, we live in a, you know, multilateral, pro-multilateral, free kind of trade, promotion, great stability. We're seen as solid, we deliver, we've got great talent, entrepreneurial mindset. We've got to make sure we continue to nurture the ecosystem to make sure all of those things are great, and that we lead with courage in the kind of lighthouse stuff we're talking about, right? Around sustainability, around AI, around those other elements of it. And I think the investments will come, okay? You guys know better on how you can attract them, but I think we've never been more attractive, okay, as a country. I do think we have to watch more the cost piece of it in the years to come, because cost competitiveness is very much on people's minds at the moment, so we just got to watch that as a country. We don't become to do from a supply chain perspective, manufacturing perspective, we don't become too expensive. We're a little bit pushing up there at the moment, but all of the other factors outweigh it. We just need to make sure it doesn't become a derailer for us. So we've got to manage that in the broader ecosystem. But I think all of the normal stuff that we have, we've got to continue to promote that in the future, and I think we're very well positioned for further investment.
Super. Thanks so much. Really appreciate your insights, Gary. It's been great talking to you today. Will you please join me in thanking Gary?
Thank you.